Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Sean. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Testing to root out chains of transmission has been one of Beijing's main weapons to fight the nation's worst COVID-19 outbreak since early 2020. Cities where flare-ups occur require all residents to undergo PCR tests, usually every 48 hours. Mass testing has become a part of daily lives across China, similar to how many people in the West have had to show a vaccine pass to dine out, enter the office, or get on a plane. In China, the thing not to leave home without is a negative COVID test. The government is setting up tens of thousands of PCR testing stations across the country as part of an official campaign to institutionalize testing. In some cities, the goal is to have one within 15-minute walking distance of any resident. Contrary to popular belief, most aspects of testing rely on manual labor, not automation. Testers repeat the same dull work every day. PCR labs can be divided into 3 stages that encompass the entire chain, from collecting samples all the way through to uploading digital results. Most use a shift system that keeps the lab running 24 hours a day. The first stage deals with the reagent configuration and is mostly done manually. Based on the number of samples projected that day, the technicians assess the number of reagents needed and prepare them in advance. The actual samples go directly to the second section, which runs the highest risk of infection. Testers must wear airtight protective suits while carefully repeating the same steps: extract, test, and seal. This is widely recognized as the most strenuous part of the process. Automation appears only in the final stage. The tester puts samples into the amplification equipment and then waits for over an hour to determine whether they are positive based on the reaction curve the machine generates. The test results are then uploaded. If the result of a pooled testing tube samples from several people together returned positive, they would need to be reviewed in the lab first. Positive results are then reported to the local CDC for further review. Next, individual tests are administered to people in this pool to pinpoint those infected. Such a review process is meant to avoid false positives. You have watched or listened to my past reports regarding how China's residents react to the zero COVID and mass testing. What about those hundreds of thousands of testers? What kind of lives are they living, and what routine do they go through day in and day out? Xiao Zhou is one of the PCR testers. The test routine is extremely boring. She picks up a test tube, unscrews the cap, and uses a pipette in her other hand to transfer the sample into a small well less than 7 millimeters in diameter on the reaction plate. Then repeat several thousand times a day. The monotony was mind-numbing. In her own words, "I'm an emotionless sample testing machine," she says. Xiao Zhou is not alone. Almost every PCR tester described their current mood with the same refrain: assembly line. Xiao Zhou is assigned to a county-level city in the eastern Jiangsu province. On a peak day in May, the lab she worked had received 232 batches of test samples. That's more than 20,000 tubes. Like many others, Xiao Zhou's city implemented a normalized testing plan. Each time it was enforced, the city carried out roughly 220,000 tests, generating over 100,000 sample tubes. Since travel resumed, the number of people returning from out of town skyrocketed, and with them, so did the number of samples required. But the county-level city comprised just 6 qualified labs, including 2 large PCR testing bases, 2 tertiary-grade hospital labs, and 2 township hospital labs. According to Xiaozhou, professional testers are in short supply, totally only about 120 staff. All testers are put under closed-loop management. After each shift, they stay at a hotel, often no more than 10-minute walk away. Due to sporadic outbursts of COVID-19 cases, comprehensive PCR testing is more widespread than ever. As a result, third-party testing facilities are booming, but in smaller cities and the vast countryside, the heavy burden of testing falls on the shoulders of public hospitals and their lab workers who earn low salaries and with paltry benefits. Xiaozhou is now 22 years old. She joined the hospital just a year ago. In college, her parents pushed her to opt for medicine, but she resisted because she was not a fan of all the gore. She was eventually talked into medical lab science. After graduating, she would most likely work with 3 usuals: blood, urine, and stool samples in what would be a more tranquil job. But by the time she graduated last year, the pandemic had not only multiplied the lab's workload, but Xiaozhou also found herself on the front line of the battle against the pandemic. With only 8 people, her lab is now the most strained department in the entire hospital. But they aren't the only ones. Almost all hospitals are in the same boat. Xiaozhou says that in township hospitals without labs, the department only leaves 1 person in charge of the outpatient clinic and transfers everyone else to the city. Working hours are divided into tight schedules. This past spring came and went without her realizing the change in weather, and she has hardly taken any time off since March. On her birthday, her mother sent food to the hospital for her, but Xiaozhou could only wolf it down quickly before rushing back to work. Her birthday wish was simple: that the pandemic would end soon. Every day, Xiaozhou felt like she reeked like a moldy can of meat. Her arms were so sore she could barely lift them, and her fingers were full of blisters from twisting caps off. She had no desire to wash her hair. She planned to tie it up the next day and tamp it down with a hat. She prayed she could get off early because she had to go back to her office to catch an 8 a.m. shift the day after. Everyone is overworking, no matter if you are new to the job or if you are pregnant or about to retire. Xiaozhou's body was signaling change. She noticed the pimples on her nose for the first time, and her period grew irregular. Her work and eating routine were completely upended. Time in the lab dulled her senses, keeping her from feeling hunger until she walked outside, and the late nights became the norm. And fatigue could strike anytime. Once, she was in charge of unscrewing the caps while a colleague worked the pipette. They clearly sensed that her movements had slowed, and when they looked again after a while, she was leaning against the glass of the biosafety cabinet, fast asleep. She believes she has mastered the skill of sitting while sleeping. According to data from the National Health Commission, China now has about 150,000 PCR testing technicians nationwide. Compared with the mass testing that Beijing pushes out, it is not nearly enough. The high wages and the benefits of PCR tests made headlines some time ago. Xiaozhou explains that those are third-party facility offers, however, and that most testers were public hospital personnel like her, earning a subsidized 50 yuan per day of testing. It is equivalent to $7.50 a day. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.